blasting, billowing, bursting forth with the power of 10 billion butterfly sneezes.
This is Wine, Money, and Song. And if you want an insider's view of the wine industry, and if you're interested in learning about wines in different wine areas, please subscribe. So I just got back from my lake home in Lake Winnipesaukee, and I did a lot of work. I'm totally exhausted, so forgive my scruffy look. I need to shave, and I really worked my butt off up there, trying to get mildew off my roof. I repainted a few fences, railings, and really busted my hump. But I'm here doing the episode, and what I'm going to talk about today is the future of the U.S. wine market. Now, I know there's been a lot of headlines lately about how slow business is and how the market is shading down. But first, I want to go back so we can, to understand the present and to look towards the future, you have to understand the past. So the history of the wine market in America, it really started with the fine wine market, started with the Dutch going into Bordeaux in the 17th century and filling in the swamps. Now, the Dutch were experts at this, their engineers, because they did that in Holland. If you remember, Holland was very swampy, and they had to fill in the swamps there. So they had that experience, and when they went to Bordeaux, it took them many, many years, decades, to fill in the swamps. But once they were filled in, Bordeaux became the mecca for really fine wine in the world. And the English and the French would really look at Bordeaux and elevate Bordeaux. And the reason why I'm mentioning that, our history in America with wine, if you really want to follow it, of course the English settled here. And the English love wine too. You know, they used to drink wine. They used to drink Madeira, Port, and Bordeaux. And when they came over on the Mayflower and all those other things, wine was part of their regimen, and they would ship it over from overseas. It wasn't made here. So if you talk about George Washington, Thomas Jefferson, Benjamin Franklin, they loved wine. And why did they love wine? Well, if you think about it, Benjamin Franklin, Thomas Jefferson were ambassadors to France and England. And Jefferson especially was a student of wine. He used to drink all the top Bordeaux, Haut-Brion, Lafite, Yquem, and he used to send it back to America for himself, cases and cases, and he used to share it with George Washington. And Washington began to really like wine also. And that's where, to me, the seeds of the U.S. wine market started. So let's jump cut to when the immigrants from Europe moved to America. And you know, that's 100 years ago, more than 100 years ago. But they took their culture, especially the European culture of growing grapes and making wine and having a glass or two of wine with their meal. They wanted that here in America. And they were the first ones to really plant grapes to a great degree. And they went out to California, and families like Sebastiani, Louis Martini, Gallo, all those people, it was in their culture. So they started the wine industry in America. And they basically were making wines for themselves and other Italians and other Germans or whatever who were living, who had the culture to drink wine. And that's where the wine industry started. All the first vineyards are basically immigrants planting grapes so they could make wine for themselves. But in the 50s and 60s, what happened in America after World War II, people started traveling. and they went on airplanes, and they were traveling to Europe, and they were going to really good restaurants, and they were trying a lot of different wines, which were not available in the United States. So they would come home, and they would demand those wines. And it was really the start of the wine industry in America to a great degree. You know, we did have the people who were drinking wines as part of their culture, but all of a sudden, everyday Americans started drinking wine. And so with that travel and with the advent of air travel and people coming back and wanting those wines, wine started to show up in wine shops and people wanted them. But in the 70s, 80s, and 90s, the wine market exploded in America. It exploded, and I know I was part of that. It was incredible. When I first started working in the about 1970, I guess it was, I was going to college and I worked in the wine store. There was very few wines in the wine shop. You know, maybe there was 30, 40, 50 different wines. And within a few years, we had hundreds of wines. And people were very thirsty for it. And where it came from a younger generation who started to drink wine. Now, they were drinking Boone's Farm Apple, they were drinking Lambrusco, which were beverage wines, not very serious wines.
Hello, young lovers. Won't you try some good cold Boone's Farm Strawberry Hill?
Oh, how nice.
Great.
Boone's Farm Strawberry Hill.
Wines, but they were wine. It was fermented grape juice, and as I said, they weren't serious, but it began them drinking wine. And when they graduated college and they started making money, they started investigating the other wines of the world. And when that happened, the California wine industry really started to explode. There was a lot of investment from big corporations who saw the growing trend in America that people wanted to drink wine. So they put a lot of money into vineyards, and they thought that there was gold in them there, Napa Valley and Sonoma Mountains there. And the market did explode in the 80s and 90s. And I'm very thankful that I was right there in the beginning, and I was learning from the beginning as the market was growing. And I was able to make a really good living and have what I thought was a very exciting life. Drinking all these wines and going to France, going to Europe, and going to California, drinking the wines, collecting the wines, and sharing the wines. It was a very exciting time, and I really appreciate that chance. And it really identified who I was as a person. You know, wine, I was about wine. When people saw me, they thought, you know, hey, Tom loves wine, and, you know, that's his life. That's his, that's his occupation. But what happened in America, it got to be so fast, the growth, that when phylloxera, remember that little beetle louse that eats the vines? A lot of vines had to be pulled up in California. And there was a period of 5 years, and they had to replant, and you have to wait 5 years before you make wine. There was a shortage of grapes in California. They were buying wines from the south of France and blending it in with their own. They were so desperate, they didn't have enough wine. There was a shortage, and that's what fueled the investment in wine. British Tobacco bought Chateau Saint Michel, and they put tens of millions of dollars in. They bought a lot of vineyards, and they kept planting. And in California, it was the same way. They kept planting and making wine because there was a thirst for wine and there was a shortage. Well, now you think about it, it was overinvestment. Why do I say that? Is because now we're sitting on falling per capita consumption rates, that people are drinking less, and we have an oversupply of grapes, an oversupply of wine, where a lot of vines are being pulled out. that they're going to plant olive trees. They're going to do it because worldwide, globally, that was true too, not just in America. Argentina, Chile, Spain, and Bordeaux especially had a lot of overproduction now, and there's just a lot of wine in the channels, in the in the distribution channel, and if you look at it, I was talking to a friend of mine this week who is in the Bordeaux wine business, and I said to him, there's so much good wine in the world now. The quality level is really high. Winemaking is not an art; it's a science, and they've learned how to really make good wines from all over the globe, and there's a lot out there, and everything is stride rated, it's stratified, and there's so many different followings that nothing really is big anymore. It's there's no big brands. There's people just drink a little bit of everything. So now with per capita consumption going down, with and lowering the prices, I always say wine will sell at the right price. The 2023 Bordeaux's, the futures were lowered a lot and they didn't sell. So that kind of surprised me. And so where does that put us now? Well, we're pulling out vines. I can tell you in Washington State, I said about British tobacco, they're just hundreds and hundreds of acres of wine is being cut out, and they aren't producing anymore because there's such an oversupply. And the 2023 vintage in California was very high quality and large production. And now the 24s are just coming in. It's another huge harvest. And they're not going to pick a lot of the wines, the grapes, they're going to leave them on the vines. That's not a business you want to be in. So, as I said, the quality of the wines are off the charts. They're excellent. The question is are they priced to really sell? How many people, too many wines are luxury goods. And they're $150 and, there's only a certain market. So our future is, will young people start to drink wine again? Because they're not. And the wine industry has to get younger people to be back in that culture. And all across the world, all the governments are anti-alcohol. And they want consumption of alcohol to go down. And I think wine is put in the same basket as liquor is and beer is. And the abuse of alcohol, very few people who drink wine really abuse wine. It's the people who drink liquor, cocktails, who go crazy, knocking back shots and acting crazy, getting in a car. A cop never stops someone for a DWI and what'd you drink? Oh, I had a bottle of Bordeaux. I had a bottle of Napa Cabernet. No, that's it. They had beer or they had liquor. So what's going to happen? Well, with all this government forces coming to be trying to restrict consumption, it's going to shrink the market. It's going to shrink the market. And unless the younger people start adopting a culture of drinking wine, I'm not saying it's doomed, but it's going to be like a slow drip. And the numbers are down a lot. I've seen some numbers down 20%, certain sales figures. That's huge. And but the consumption, it's 4 or 5% a year, and it's lower and lower. And internationally, it's worse. It's worse than this country. So what are we going to do? The wine industry has to get on its toes and get to work in marketing and also influencing governments and getting studies done to show wine is healthful. So let's get going. So in synopsis, the future of the United States wine market, in a nutshell, what's going to happen in the future is the people who do well now, and I mean like the Gallows, the Wine Guild, Louis Vuitton, Hennessy, the big players in the wine market right now, especially in the luxury lines, they're going to be buying wineries 50 cents on the dollar, 40 cents on the dollar. And you're going to say, why are they doing that when the wine business is going down? Well, the reason why they're going to do it is, besides getting a value price on these properties and these brands that they're going to buy, they're going to have less competition. Now, the market is going to shrink, but they're going to have a bigger piece of that market share. Even though the pie is smaller, their market share is going to be bigger. And you're going to see all these there's going to be less and less wineries. And there's going to be less competition. And these big players, the giants in the industry, are going to make out because they can hold out longer while the business is in a downfall. They can ride it out. They have other products that they sell, and they have more capital. They can withstand the drip in the market. So that's what I see for the future. Less competition and smaller amounts of winery and less choice for you as a consumer.